Well, if you, I think we got our Wi-Fi's working all right. We had trouble with it last week. But if you have a smart device and you want to pull up YouVersion, the sermon notes should be on YouVersion. Just go to Live, YouVersion Live, and then if it don't pull up, just punch in 63935. And it should pull up if you do that in the search bar. Or our bulletins are in the back. And something a little different today with the sermon notes. If you have a bulletin, if you don't, feel free to go back. You're not going to bother me if you get up and go back there. Today they are more of a, they're just questions I want you to answer. They're more of a polling question. And if you see on there, on your bulletins, I ask you to answer the questions. The questions are over here. I ask you to answer the questions on this section here, the communication section. You can use, am I shaking? You can use the comment section, or you will always find on the communication section, the back of it will always be blank. If you ever need to write on the back of it, that gives you plenty of room back there to write on. But for example, number one, all of them are really yes or no questions. But if you wanted to put on there why you answered yes or why you answered no, you've got the room on the back to do that. So just put like number one, yes or no, number two, yes or no. If you do that, tear that off and put it on in the basket back there, I'd appreciate it. I think that would be really neat if you do that and just kind of know where you're at, what you think. Your opinion certainly matters. You get to hear my opinion all the time. But I want to hear from you. This is, I had that on a slide actually. Number one, yes or no, number two. And actually 3 is A and B. And just put that on the communication part if you would. Okay. I am a little insecure this morning bringing this message to you, and it's been a while since I originally decided to do this. It's been about 3 months ago that the Supreme Court made the decision on same-sex marriage. And I think as a pastor, you need to know what I think. You don't always have to agree with me. We can still worship together and everything's great. You don't always have to agree with me. You can't deny the truth of the Word. The Word is truth. You can't deny that. But you can disagree with me, and that's fine. That's fine. But it's been about 3 months. I think every pastor should respond to their churches how they feel on paramount decisions such as these. I think as Christians, we have been silent far too long on these kind of issues. I think we have ignored the degradation of morals in our country for far too long. And now we are reaping what we sow. Come right down to it. I wanted to wait a little bit before I responded because I wanted the emotions of this decision on both sides of the aisle to kind of settle down and opinions were being tossed around. I mean, you go to that place where you can find all truth and knowledge, Facebook, and there was all kinds of things on it, and I just kind of wanted all that to kind of cool down a little bit. And I think that it has, at that time, like I said, everybody had an opinion. They were throwing their opinions around like accusations during a campaign year. But now that the storm has kind of blown over, the waters has kind of subsided, and I think it's time that we talk about this. During this time period, I did write a letter to our senators and representatives, and it is on the back table back there. We have some copies of it. I'm not promoting the letter. I'm not asking you to write a letter. But it's on the back table back there. If you would like a copy, that's fine. If you just like to see what it says. But I did send it to our senators and to our representatives. 3 months ago or so, and I haven't received any response back at all, which kind of surprises me. At least saying, hey, thanks for your letter, thanks for your comments, but I've received nothing from all three of them, which is, I don't know, I think it's kind of interesting. But anyway, let's take a look at what it means and what happened. Over the last few months, I've seen these familiar verses. We see those quite often when it comes to this subject. And these are very clear. They're very clear that when it comes to the subject of homosexuality, that it is a sin. It is a sin. It's very clear. These scriptures, these are not only scriptures that tell that, but there's also stories involved here too. And they back each other up. They do not contradict one another. The fact that homosexuality is a sin and is detestable in the eyes of God is not just some eisegetical notion that's taken out of context. It's true. And the Bible tells it, and then the Bible says that it's true. And that we can't deny. Okay? Now, I've also seen Christians being accused of not showing the love of Christ if we condemn this lifestyle. And we are told that we must love the sinner and hate the sin. How many times have we heard that? And, it's interesting whenever we hear that. Whenever somebody says that, they're automatically saying that homosexuality is a sin. But we've heard that many times. I've also seen the argument that they cannot help it, that God's made them this way, and that's just the way they are. And these arguments could go on and on and on and on and on. And these are endless topics of discussion that very few people... Now, here's the problem. We have all these debates on this topic, but very few people approach this subject with an open mind. You don't have a neutral point of view. You already have your point of view when you enter into this discussion. And so therefore, it's really kind of pointless, isn't it? It's about as pointless to argue this point as it is to try to convince a bunch of people who are like-minded of something they already believe in. We do that at church all the time, don't we? I could pull up these scriptures that I have on the screen and I could jump up and down and stomp my feet and say, homosexuality is a sin. And everybody would go, yeah. Most people in church, there may be a few that disagree with me, but most people in church say, yeah. So what did you learn today? Nothing. So it's really kind of pointless. Now, for all of us that has played a role in engaging in this subject in one of these forms that I've just described, I just want to say congratulations. Congratulations, because you have just been used as a pawn or as fuel to promote the larger picture. Now, I think if we just strip down the noise, if we strip down the noise and got down to, as we say, the brass tacks, and reveal the real reason and the motivation behind this movement and behind this judgment that we're about to talk about, we need to go back several years. Several years for me, anyway. Some of you maybe not too long, and some of you may be in it. But let's go back to high school. Let's go back to high school. Now, when I was in high school, there was a lot of drama, okay? And I'm not talking about Miss Bonnell's class, all right? There was a lot of drama between teenagers. Drama is one of those words today that I don't think maybe it was as popular back then. We use drama a lot today, but there was drama between teenagers all the time when I was in high school. And let me give you an example. I cannot believe that girl. She has the nerve to go out with my ex-boyfriend. And I cannot believe you guys. You're acting like you're her friends. Now, you're going to have to make a decision whether you are going to be her friends or you're going to be my friends. You cannot have it both ways. You ever been there? You heard that? Maybe you were that. Maybe you are that. I don't know. But how many times have we heard that drama? Okay? So why is it so offensive to this person that her friends can be friends with her ex-boyfriend's girlfriend? The problem is for her friends to accept this girl as a friend means that they accept her actions. And in turn means that this boy is actually likable and maybe he's boyfriend material. So if he is boyfriend material, then maybe the split up wasn't entirely his fault. Then that would transfer some of the fault back to the original girlfriend, and this simply isn't acceptable. Right? Does that make your head spin? How often does that happen? How common and natural is that? Now you're probably thinking, what in the world does this have to do with the Supreme Court decision? Well, hopefully we can get there. Now, with that in mind, don't lose that. Okay, don't lose that. With that in mind, let's look at the original case of the Supreme Court and see what it was based on. John Arthur and James Obergefell were legally married in Maryland. They lived in Ohio, and Ohio did not recognize same-sex marriages. John was dying of ALS, and they wanted their marriage to be recognized on his death certificate. They wanted their marriage to be recognized in the state of Ohio, and they wanted the marriage to be recognized on his death certificate. Now, this case went from these, they may be complex because of the situation, but very simple grievances, these two very simple grievances, into what it became today. Okay? That's how it all started. Now, what I want us to do, and I really wished we had more time. I would really like to get into this deeper, but we just don't have the time to do so. But what I want us to do now is to look at the Supreme Court's majority opinion and the minority dissents. And the best we can do is just take some little pieces of it, okay? Because the majority opinion of the Supreme Court is like 30 pages long. Now, I invite you to go on the internet. It's interesting, I think, and I think it would make a great study. The majority opinion and the dissents would make a great study. Get on the internet and go to the Supreme Court website. Don't go to some news website or something like that that's one-sided. Go to the Supreme Court website, and it'll show you exactly what the opinion and dissents were. And the dissents were written by each of the justices. The ones that voted against it were written by each of the justices, and that's even longer than 30 pages. So it's a lot. There's a lot there. So all I could do was just take some very small portions. Now, at the end of the majority's opinion, they have a conclusion. Okay, and that's what I'm going to read today is the conclusion of the majority's opinion. These are kind of long, some of them, so please bear with me. No union is more profound than marriage, for it embodies the highest idea of love, fidelity, devotion, sacrifice, and family. In forming a marital union, two people become something greater than once they were. As some of the petitioners in this case demonstrate, marriage embodies a love that may endure even past death. It would misunderstand these men and women to say they disrespect the idea of marriage. Their plea is that they do respect it so deeply that they seek to find its fulfillment for themselves. Their hope is not to be is not to be condemned to live in loneliness, excluded from one of civilization's oldest institutions. They ask for equal dignity in the eyes of the law. The Constitution grants them that right. The judgment of the Court of Appeals of the Sixth Circuit is reversed. It is so ordered. And that's basically the conclusion that says, yes, same-sex marriage can be legal. Now, what I want to do is read the opinion of Justice Roberts, his dissent, and which his disagreement. He voted against this. And this is with the agreement of Justice Scalia and Justice Thomas. And the reason why I want to read this, I read a portion of it, it's not the whole thing, is that it very much agrees with my opinion. Okay? It very much agrees with mine. So if you really want to know where I stand, I think that Justice Roberts describes it very well. Past 6 years, voters and legislators in 11 states and the District of Columbia have revised their laws to allow marriage between two people of the same sex. But this court is not a legislature. Whether same-sex marriage is a good idea should be of no concern to us. Under the Constitution, judges have power to say what the law is, not what the law should be. The people who ratified the Constitution authorized courts to exercise neither force nor will, but merely judgment. Although the policy arguments for extending marriage to same-sex couples may be compelling, the legal arguments for requiring such an extension are not. The fundamental right to marry does not include a right to make a state change its definition of marriage. And a state's decision to maintain the meaning of marriage that has persisted in the culture throughout human history can hardly be called irrational. In short, our Constitution does not enact any one theory of marriage. The people of a state are free to expand marriage to include same-sex couples or retain the historic definition. Today, however, the court takes the extraordinary step of offering every state to license and recognize same-sex marriage. Many people will rejoice at this decision, and I begrudge none of their celebration. But for those who believe in a government of laws, not of men, the majority's approach is deeply disheartening. Supporters of same-sex marriage have achieved considerable success persuading their fellow citizens through the democratic process to adopt their view. That ends today. 5 lawyers have closed the debate and enacted their own vision of marriage as a matter of constitutional law. Sealing this issue from the people will for many cast a cloud over same-sex marriage, taking a dramatic social change that much more difficult to accept. The majority's decision is an act of will, not a legal judgment. The right it announces has no basis in the Constitution or the court's precedents. Now that's a lot, but basically he's saying it wasn't the court's place to do this. They made a legislative decision, not a judicial decision. Now, let's go back to school. Okay, let's go back to high school. Don't forget high school, okay? Let's go back to school and remember that girl. Remember that girl that believes that her ex-boyfriend is now undateable for the rest of his life, okay? Unless he asks her or something like that, however it's supposed to work. Now, she has the right to her opinion. Okay, she has the right to her opinion. She has the right to believe that this boy is undateable. Okay? She has the right to express that opinion. Okay? But whenever she starts forcing her opinion upon others, that's when the line becomes crossed. That's where the problem is. And that's where it's not accepted. She begins to enlist techniques of force and manipulation to further her case. You cannot be friends with her if you want to continue to be my friend. This is exactly what the homosexual community has done for the last several years. When those who refuse to accept their way of life have found themselves tagged as homophobes, have been found guilty of discrimination, and those in the Christian community have been told that they do not have the love of God in them if they refuse to accept their beliefs. Now, do I have proof? That's pretty strong words, isn't it? Now, do I have proof of that? I do. There has been cases all across the country. Florists who refuse to do same-sex weddings, bakeries who refuse to do cakes for same-sex weddings, restaurants, and the list goes on. And of course, the latest and the most popular is the county clerk in Morehead, Kentucky, Kim Davis. Now, in all of these situations that I just mentioned, were there alternative options? Were there alternative options? Was there another bakery that these people could go to? Was there another florist that these people could go to? Was there somewhere else you could get a marriage license? Was there other alternatives? Other options? Yes, absolutely. There were people flying from California to Morehead, Kentucky to get a marriage certificate. But you see, receiving the service was never the point. It's about forcing the point and demanding that someone else accepts your opinion. The homosexual community has been very good at doing this. They've been very efficient at this. They've been very efficient at being able to manipulate people to the point that the majority of justices in the highest court of the land has been manipulated to do this. Members of the highest form of the judicial system has made a legislative decision based upon the principle of you cannot date my ex-boyfriend. It's the same thing. If you strip away the noise, if you strip away the clutter, it's the same selfish motives. I don't know what it is about the sin of homosexuality, but it has always carried a forceful connotation for everyone to accept their practices. Again, that's strong words. But do I have proof to back my words up? Yes, I do. And I find it in God's Word. I got two stories in the Old Testament that I'm going to cover very quickly. One is the most popular, and you're probably already thinking of it, the story of Sodom. Story of Lot, where he lived in Sodom, which is found in Genesis 19. And also, one that's maybe not quite as popular is a story found in Judges 19. Genesis 19, Judges 19. It's a story of Gibeah. Now, I don't really have much time to go into the background or anything of these stories. I wished I did. Maybe this should have been 2 sermons. I don't know. But basically, here's what happened. There were visitors that come into the town. And the visitors didn't have a place to stay. It was becoming night. So they went into someone's house to stay the night at their house. So now it's night. And the visitors has come in and stayed the night. And then they're in this person's house that lives in the town. And we're going to start in Genesis. Genesis 19, 4 through 5. Now before they lay down, the men of the city, the men of Sodom, both old and young, all the people from every quarter surrounded the house. And they called to Lot and said to him, and Lot's the owner of the home, "Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us that we may know them carnally." And if you read some of the other versions, this is New King James, but they'll just say, bring them out so that we can have sex with them. Now that's Genesis. Judges 19:22. As they were enjoying themselves, suddenly certain men of the city, perverted men, surrounded the house and beat on the door. They spoke to the master of the house, the one who owned the house, the old man, saying, "Bring out the man who came to your house, that we may know him carnally." You've got a visitor in town. And you see, and maybe I should have went even deeper into this, but I'm afraid of time. But what happened when the owners of the houses, in both situations, the owner of the houses came out and said, "Don't do this. Don't do this." What happened? They became even more violent, and they became even more forceful. There's something about this sin that is forceful. You are going to accept what we want. This sin refuses tolerance for those that choose not to accept it. They're the ones that holler tolerance the loudest, but they refuse tolerance. Acceptance must be achieved even if it's by force. I think this philosophy has become quite evident today. Just look around. Guys, you can come on up. In conclusion, today, I tried to separate the sin of homosexuality with those who are caught up in it. Because I wanted to talk about that sin. And certainly, homosexuality isn't the only sinful lifestyle. There are many sinful lifestyles. And people get caught up in sinful lifestyles. People become a slave of those lifestyles. And I think the only way, and certainly as Christians, the only way to bring people out of this lifestyle is the same answer as the only way to bring people out of any sinful lifestyle. And that's through love. You are not going to change them. You are not going to change them by engaging in those arguments that I talked about at the beginning of this message, pointing your finger in their face and saying, "You're going to hell." Sorry, it's not going to work. You're going to have to develop relationships with them. You're going to have to develop relationships with them in a way that you do not accept their lifestyle, but you love them. And that can be done. I know that can be done. You love them. Now, there's something kind of scary about that for us, okay? Before we get on our high and mighty holy roller seat here and say, "Well, I don't believe in homosexuality and I'm this Christian." And if you're being a witness to someone who is caught up in a sinful lifestyle, you better have your life together. Okay? Because if you tell them that this is a sin, that your lifestyle is a sin, then what are they going to do when they look at your life? What are they going to do when they look at us and they say, "Well, hold it here. Why is it that you're telling me that my lifestyle is wrong because it goes against what God's Word says, but then I look at your lifestyle, Mr. Christian, Mrs. Christian, and you're doing this?" Somebody tell me the difference. You see, before we can be a witness to these people, we got to get our lives together. Our lives has got to shine Jesus Christ through the whole thing. Through the whole thing, Jesus has still got to be the subject. He has still got to be the subject. And one of the things that we've got to do, and this is so hard, so it's with our Christian, it's with our whole life that we've got to do, is we got to let go, just like I talked about earlier. We got to let go. When we face one of these situations, when we so want to plan, don't we? We want to plan for everything. And sometimes we just got to let go of our plan and let God just lead us. Let the Holy Spirit just lead us. I don't know what to say, but I'm just going to trust in God. Man, that leaves me out there vulnerable. But I think that's the place where God wants us. Too often I'm afraid that those who are in the homosexual lifestyle and Christians, they look like this. They look like they're on opposite sides. You're my opposition. No, they're not our opposition. They may do things against us. They may throw us in prison. They may do things. They have done things to these Christian business owners. They've caused them to have huge fines. How do you like to be an owner trying to keep a cake business going and you get a $175,000 fine thrown on you? But they are still not in opposition to them. We're to love them. We're to be on their side. Not accept what they're doing. But we want to pull them out of that lifestyle through the love of Jesus Christ. Not because of my knowledge or because I can argue good, or no, because of the love of Jesus Christ. That's the only way we're going to pull them out. And we got to pray about these things. It's sad to me, and I believe it this way, that these intelligent people in the Supreme Court can be manipulated in such a way. Let us not be. Because too many times in our Christian communities, we are manipulated in that way. We do accept these things. We have churches doing gay weddings. We have churches accepting. We have churches with homosexual pastors. Not the Church of God when I say we, but I mean in the Christian circle. We cannot be manipulated by what is false in this world. We got to be strong. We got to know what the Word says. And we got to be willing to stand. It's interesting. We talked about tolerance and stuff in Sunday school today. You know, one of the reasons why we choose to be politically correct because we don't want to face what's coming if we don't. We don't want to face the ridicule. We don't want to face fines. We don't want to face prison. We don't want to face losing friends. We don't want to face losing family. We're standing for truth. We can stand for truth and we can love the sinner. We can do it. It's possible. So anyway, this morning, I hope you don't hate me. If you want to talk about this subject privately, I'm certainly open. I don't have all the answers, but Jesus is the subject. We need to pray. We need to pray. One of the reasons why I read the dissents, or at least one of the dissents in the Supreme Court, it just showed you how when we could say, well, this was a Supreme Court decision, but let me tell you, the ones that disagreed with this decision, they disagreed with it adamantly. We need to pray. Come this morning if you will.